Everybody knows that Aikido doesn't work in MMA. Yet what if everyone is wrong? After having studied and taught Aikido for more than a decade and realizing that what I learned didn't work in a fight or self-defense situation, for about a year I tried to make it functional. Unfortunately, the results were still unsuccessful. I lost hope and quit Aikido entirely. I moved on to practice various combat sports such as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kickboxing for the next few years. Until one day, I decided to try doing Aikido with my newly learned combat sports skills against a karate practitioner. While I was still unsuccessful, I saw a glimpse of potential, which I decided to pursue. I contacted Oliver Enkamp, a professional MMA fighter and coach with a traditional martial arts background. Oliver agreed to meet me and explore together if Aikido principles, which I learned as an Aikidoka, could be applied in the cage. I flew to meet him in Sweden, Stockholm, where I made a list of 8 main Aikido principles. With my newfound knowledge and skills, plus Oliver's decades of fighting experience and coaching, we were eager to see how many of these Aikido principles could be applied in MMA. We started off looking at the traditional Aikido stance known as Hanmi.
Traditionally, it's like a T letter that I stand back more or less in the width of my shoulders. Front foot is facing forward, back foot is diagonal, and then the hands are usually in front of the core. The reasoning behind the Aikido stance is that I can turn easily from here and move out of the attack line because it's accepting pressure from the front. One of the flaws I see with this stance is that if somebody pushes me this way,
right,
I'm doomed. So it's all about facing what's in front of me.
What you just mentioned now, that your feet are on a line. I had this problem coming from karate into MMA because I would have very much a bladed stance like this, fighting like this. That means you're very good at moving forward and backward, as I can push off with this leg to go forward and with this leg to go backward. But my movement to the sides are not as good. The first thing I would correct is to take this foot out a bit. I still like the angle of it because you open up your hip. The hip needs to be open to be able to turn into your strikes, into your kicks. This would make it much easier to move in all 4 directions. I saw you were doing these pivots. If someone crowds you with punches and coming forward, this is a very narrow way of pivoting. I'm probably gonna walk into your punches. I would probably step out before I would do a rotational step.
This was a very interesting moment for me. The way he demonstrated the step out of the attack line was exactly how I learned it during my Aikido training. Stepping out of the attack line was also one of the main Aikido principles that we were yet to explore, but the fact that Oliver showed how he used it himself was promising.
To do the rotations, I would first step out from the attack line, so I get my target away from your strikes, and then I would do this kind of step.
What about the hands? They're usually like this is the traditional stance. Sometimes you open up, tricking the person to attack you, and then you respond.
This reminds me a lot of the samurai movies where you have a sword and you want to bait the attacker in. So if I lower my sword, you're going to attack high for some kind of counter. If I have it up here, you're gonna go low, right? For some kind of counter. If I have my hands low, you won't attack my stomach, but you will probably go to the face. And I can use that for my defense. So it's easier for me to steer your attack where I know I can defend it. If we know we're fighting, I will have my guard up. I can use my elbows to cover these areas. I can use my hands to cover these areas. And I can use my legs to cover these areas. There's not much space for you to attack, but I don't think Aikido is based around 2 people deciding to fight. You get ambushed by someone, you're probably not gonna stand like this. So if you have your hands down like this, maybe more realistic, you're gonna get attacked from here. So you train your responses, whatever you do, with your hands down.
After thinking about it, Oliver also remembered the so-called Philly shell, where the hands are kept down, a stance made famous by Floyd Mayweather, one of the best boxers of all time.
They were actually keep their hands down here on purpose to protect the body and use the shoulders to protect the head. Watch, for example, greatest boxer of all time, Muhammad Ali. He would dance around with his hands here because now you won't see them coming. If you see where my hands are, they're gonna come in a straight line. So keeping the hands here, I can circle in hooks and come from underneath.
I then told Oliver that I heard about the so-called long guard, a stance used in striking sports which to me looked similar to the Aikido stance.
So a long guard is still tight. You see my shoulders are protecting. Whenever you would strike, I would be able to shoulder roll. Say if you come in with a swing, I have a long guard. Oh shit, I can still make it slide off and come back.
It's probably the most similar stance to Aikido that I've seen, which is functional. It's bladed. If I'm here, it's like not a huge changed.
I would agree. This is more similar to the Aikido stance, the long guard.
While the Aikido stance didn't look practical to me in my traditional training, comparing it to the long guard and modifying it suddenly started to make sense, making the Aikido stance applicable to MMA. The next principle we looked at is called irimi, or entering, a principle existing in almost all of the Aikido techniques, where you get closer to the attacker to apply your techniques and to position yourself in a place where it's difficult to attack you again. The question was, does this apply to combat sports as well?
If I want to wrestle with you, I need to set it up with a good entry. If we're fighting and I just try to grab your legs from here, you're going to stop me. An entry here would be to use some kind of setup, maybe feinting and going into a striking exchange just to make you strike against me. And when you strike back, that's my entry. So I saw the movement you did before. You took a step,
Right.
and you made a pivot. This is a steps used in boxing a lot. If you throw your cross,
Yeah.
I would take a slip, this entry, and from here I would take an angle. If you throw your jab, I can take a cross step here, and I can spin off at an angle. These are similar movements to what you just did.
What Oliver was commenting on in Aikido is known as tenkan, or diverting. It's a turn that is used to avoid various attacks.
The pace is going to be higher, but I'm still going to use the same tricks. So I would still use my movement and my entries to get into you. So I'm entering and angling. If I would enter to grapple instead, I might take this step. I might cut the angle like this instead.
Right.
To off balance you. Or I can use an entry like this to crowd you, and I could keep
Right.
going right forward.
Right,
Strike
right.
using my frames. If I would step in here and throw 1-2, now I'm gonna take an angle before I throw my next punch, because you're probably gonna aim at my head and throw that hand.
Right.
So I will move over here and I will throw my next strikes here. You're probably gonna come around from this side or something, so I'm gonna move over here and always adding the angles in between strikes.
The principle of staying safe by entering also made sense to Oliver.
They feel they're safe out here, slipping and dodging out here, but now I'm in perfect range for your strikes. Much more safe for me to slip and roll around here. The closer I am to you, the more of an angle I'm gonna get with one step. So if I'm this close and make a pivot, I'm almost at your back. This is more than 90 degrees. If I'm out here and make the exact same footwork now, I'm not even 45 degrees. If I take, you see how far away I am from this hand. But if I try to do the same movement out here, whoop, you can still follow up.
All in all, both irimi and tenkan principles turned out to be functional in MMA. The next principle we looked at is known as atemi. While translated by many simply as a strike, in Aikido it's commonly described as a means to upset your opponent's balance or mind in order to apply your technique. After hearing about it, that's what Oliver had to say.
If I'm just looking at your head, I'm gonna kick, you're gonna block it, right? Often I do like this. Boom.
Oh.
See, I look at your leg to draw your attention. That's my smoke screen. That's my atemi, perhaps. For the takedowns, I use my strikes.
Right.
For you to throw back your strikes, that's my entry. As we said before, if I just try to dive for your legs, I'm probably not going to get him if you're trained at takedown defense.
This explanation of atemi also seemed to make a lot of sense, making yet another Aikido principle valid for MMA. The next principle was kuzushi, which is usually explained as unbalancing your opponent before you make a throw, a term used both in Aikido and Judo.
If we're standing like this, okay, we have the exact same position. If I go in and try to sweep your leg without doing anything else,
I can actually sweep you.
Yeah, exactly. And you probably are, because I'm standing on one leg and you're standing on
Right.
two. Kuzushi would be like this. I break your balance. Now I'm in the better position. If you're standing heavy on your two legs and I'm gonna try to yank this leg, it's not gonna be easy. My kuzushi would be like this. I put your weight on this leg, and now I pull this leg. So you always need the off balancing to take the other guy.
I explained that unfortunately in my Aikido training, while I was taught kuzushi, I wasn't able to apply it in fighting or sparring, as for example when trying to perform an Aikido technique known as riminage. Luckily, Oliver told me that this technique reminded him of something known as the knee tap.
If I stand over here and I
Right.
try to do like this,
Right.
I'm not gonna get you. So if I put my hands here and now I start to walk, you see, I get your weight on the rear leg.
Right.
So the kuzushi is not pulling you, but walking my weight behind you.
After ticking off yet another Aikido principle that can be used in MMA, we then took a look at blending and redirecting, a principle commonly discussed in Aikido where the practitioner tries to blend with an attack or to redirect it in order to perform a technique.
So blending for me would be this. I use this and throw you this way. If I pull you down, you're gonna straighten up, right? So I can use this as an entry. Or I pull you down, you pull up again. I use that as an entry for the legs, throw a jab. I redirect it this way because I want to stop the rotation from your other hand. If I would use this one, boom, I open up your rotation, right? Follow up with this, boom. So I redirect in the way that I stop your next movement. And now if I want to grapple, I would step in here. Or if I want to strike, I just open up a spot here.
I also asked Oliver about blending and redirecting kicks.
So, whoop, boom. This is also a counter we do a lot. I redirect your kick this way, and now I'm turned up for a counter punch. A little bit more risky, but I could redirect it this way.
Right.
Boom, boom, to expose your back. I see this a lot in Thai boxing. They're good at catching the kick here.
Right, yeah.
Boom, and then they redirect here. You see, they pull and boom, they come in. Okay. So I redirect you into my strike, into the force.
Next up was tegatana, or sword arm, a principle where the arm is extended forward in a round way, which is meant to create a connection between the arm and the core to generate more power from the whole body. This reminded Oliver of an MMA principle called taking away the slack.
You see a lot of beginners learning hooks. They haven't connected the joints, so they have slack in their punches. And I punch, and you see the elbow comes here, or it comes here. You know, they haven't connected it together. Imagine the arm being in a cast. Like I broke my arm, I put it in a cast. Now nothing is moving. There's no slack, and I keep my elbow right behind of the punch at the point of impact, and I learn to use my body and rotate the strike. Instead of using my arm like this, I tense the arm. And I use my body.
Yeah, that's very heavy.
The Russian boxers, they have a lot of success using more like a stiff arm. You jab and you circle these hooks in. You can get very powerful punches by striking this way. We use frames to stop takedowns. If you would dive for my legs and I have too much slack in my arms, you would just smash my arm and take me down. So if I can use the same principle, tense the joints, and you do the same thing, boom. I'm almost striking your neck, right? To stop you from getting in.
The question for me, like you mentioned, the Russian style, it's probably not that much of an arm as much as it's the body, right?
This is where the movement starts, and everything is about rotations. Imagine my arms are just connected to my core, and I start rotating. Now I can choose if I want to have this angle, or this angle, but my joints are pretty stiff, just an extension of this rotation. This is what creates the force, and I can deliver it through this or through this. For the opposite as well, having slack. If I grab your gi and I would have a tegatana here and I would try to pull you, it wouldn't be that good. But if I have a slack, you see, I get that chain reaction.
But that goes to your tongue.
Yeah. So I would tense this, but I will not connect the joints until I pull. For a kusushi, if I have too much slack here, I'm not going to do anything, right? So if I tense up, whoop, boom, I can take it down. But that requires me to have the tegatana principle, so I have a strong frame to push you off balance.
The next principle we took a look at is known as Mai, often translated as engagement distance. It is the ability of the Aikido practitioner to know when they are at a safe distance or when the distance is right to perform a technique.
This is the first thing I teach a beginner, but it's also the hardest thing to master. Imagine you have like a circle where you can reach me. Without having sparred that much with you, I would say somewhere around here, I still feel safe. If I take a step in here, now I've crossed this line, the danger zones. I would stay out here and I would perhaps going to feint like this to see your reactions. And then from this, I can draw attacks and start putting more pressure. If you move forward, I need to adjust. So you keep pushing forward, I need to break the space like this. If you go backward, I need to use this momentum to take this space. So when you start to move away from me, I'm gonna be there all the time. I put my pressure. I don't need to use my hands. I can put pressure just with my intention. If you move around a bit, I'm gonna put pressure on you without doing anything.
Right, yeah, you're absolutely there.
So it's all about the focus here. And I feel like at any point of time now, I can choose to engage. I will drop my Maya and feel the difference now.
Yeah, I can see like...
Yeah.
I can strike. I
I'm
feel
moving around you, but I'm not controlling you.
To my surprise, all of the 8 Aikido principles turned out to be practical in MMA. But I only discovered this after I explored them with an experienced fighter while having fighting experience myself. This made me think about the fact that initially the founder of Aikido allowed only experienced martial artists to learn Aikido. Maybe it's because he needed the person to already know how to fight before teaching them Aikido itself. One way or another, this piqued my curiosity even more to continue to explore how functional Aikido would look like. If you're interested to see how me and a karate black belt explored what 90% of Aikido is, click on this video right here. If you want to see the full exchange between me and Oliver of exploring Aikido principles in MMA, click here. Thank you for watching, and as always, I wish you to own your journey.